Chapter 2024. After confirming that Yu Siqing had left, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun quickly entered Yu Siqing's room. Previously, they had only inadvertently revealed a bit of their aura, but Yu Siqing had already discovered it. It could be seen how vigilant she was. Although Yu Siqing had left for the banquet, she might return at any time. After all, for matters like the banquet, other than the opening, it was more important. After that, they could leave whenever they wanted. According to their judgment of Yu Siqing, she would probably keep this matter in mind, so they didn't have much time. They had to hurry. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun rushed into the room at lightning speed. Yu Siqing's room wasn't small, but there were many things inside, making it seem crowded. Bailey Hongzhuang only needed a glance to know that this was a doctor's specialty. It seemed that Yu Siqing's attainments in medicine weren't low. If she wasn't so obsessed with medicine, this place wouldn't be so crowded. However, Bailey Hongzhuang clearly wasn't concerned about this. She was concerned about how to find the switch to enter the dungeon. Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang searched for a while, but didn't find any underground passage. Clearly, Yu Siqing had set up a special mechanism. If they couldn't find a mechanism, they wouldn't be able to enter the passage. Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang immediately searched the room. It was no wonder that Yu Siqing had imprisoned Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing for so long without anyone discovering it. This mechanism must have been set up very cleverly. Di Beichun found the place where the mechanism was usually set up. However, he couldn't find the switch. As time passed, beads of sweat appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's foreheads. This was something they hadn't thought of before. The Shurtian Pavilion could only help them determine the location, but didn't have the opportunity to find the mechanism. At the same time, they didn't think that Yu Siqing's mechanism would be so difficult to find. I've searched all the possible places here, but I didn't find the mechanism. Di Beichun frowned. Logically speaking, such a situation shouldn't have happened. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get any results. Where was the mechanism? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were also filled with a hint of doubt. She had entered the house to search until now and had not noticed the location of the mechanism. It was too strange. Although the house was not small, these were the only things that could be used as mechanisms. Could it be that there was something else that they had overlooked? Time was of the essence. Bailey Hongzhuang was very anxious, but she still forced herself to calm down. If he lost his sense of propriety at this time, it would really be over. As she pondered, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze quietly landed on Yu Siqing's table that was piled with medicinal herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly frowned, because she found a very strange herb among the herbs, the five-flavor grass. The five-flavor grass was a very special herb. Its effect was ordinary, and it only had a mediating effect among herbs. Bailey Hongzhuang originally didn't notice the five-flavor grass because there was a stalk of clear confusion flower beside it. Putting the five-flavor grass and the clear confusion flower together would affect the medicinal properties. Chapter 2025. Although she had never seen Yu Siqing's medical skills with her own eyes, judging from Yu Siqing's reputation, her medical skills would not be bad. She should know this. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but walk to the five-flavor herb and reach out to touch it. However, Bailey Hongzhuang felt something different when she touched it. The five-flavor herb felt different. It was very hard. Bailey Hongzhuang knew the five-flavor herb very well. It definitely did not feel like this. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's action, Di Beichun walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. He did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang took out this herb with such a strange expression. Hongzhuang, what's wrong with this herb? Since Bailey Hongzhuang showed such an expression, Di Beichun knew that there must be a problem. This herb is very strange, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. She picked up the five-flavor herb. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun immediately focused their attention on the table. There was a very small bump on the table. If one did not look carefully, one would not notice it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. This was probably the mechanism. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang pressed the bump. Ka ka ka. The sound of a mechanism was suddenly heard. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun found that the floor tiles on the ground moved quietly and appeared in a tunnel. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on both their faces. Although it took a lot of effort, they finally found it. Bailey Hongzhuang put the 5-flavor grass back to its original place. This Yusiching was really a cunning old fox. With this kind of arrangement, as long as one didn't understand medicine, they wouldn't notice the uniqueness of this medicinal herb. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly understood why there were so many herbs in Yusiching's room. From the beginning, Yusiching had an ulterior motive. She wanted to hide the existence of this mechanism. Di Beichen also understood at this moment. He had sent people to check Yusiching's room before, but they did not get any results. This was because they could not find the location of the mechanism at all. He did not expect the mechanism to be so hidden. If Bailey Hongzhuang did not come with him, he would not be able to find the mechanism. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen rushed into the tunnel as soon as it opened. Time was of the essence, and no one wanted to waste any time. When Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing heard the sound of the mechanism from upstairs, they couldn't help but frown. Yu Xiqing's group had just come down, and they did not expect them to come again. What were they planning? However, when Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing saw a completely unfamiliar young man, their eyes filled with confusion. They had been locked up in the dungeon for so many years. Other than Yu Xiqing and the others they were familiar with, they had never seen anyone else. They did not know what this man was here for. However, when they saw the woman behind the young man, their eyes froze and disbelief filled their faces. Mu Lingbing stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang, her eyes filled with shock. That was because the face in front of him was so familiar. Chapter 2026. Lan Yunxiao's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. After being locked up in the dungeon for so long, many things could no longer attract his attention. Even if Yu Xiqing tortured him in every possible way, he wouldn't care. However, the face in front of him had tugged at a string in his heart. He and Mu Lingbing had been locked up in the dungeon, living a life worse than death. They could have chosen to commit suicide long ago, but the stubbornness in their hearts had forced them to hold on until now. That was their daughter. Back then, they had only spent a short amount of time with their daughter. Even though the chances of their daughter surviving back then weren't very high, they were still unwilling to give up that sliver of hope. However, the figure in front of them was clearly their daughter from their dreams. "Daughter, this is my daughter!" Mu Lingbing's eyes reddened as her gaze focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. She was afraid that if she blinked, the face in front of her would disappear. She even suspected that she was dreaming. Even if her daughter was still alive, she was only a citizen of Fengbo. It was impossible for her to appear here. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang saw Mu Lingbing, she was certain that the woman in front of her was her mother because their appearances were very similar. However, Mu Lingbing's appearance was more gentle and delicate, graceful and moving. Although her heart was filled with emotions, Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were tied to the metal frame. Their bodies were dirty and disheveled, their skin covered in new and old scars, and the blood scabs were very obvious. Just by looking at their mangled bodies, one could tell what kind of destruction they had suffered. At this thought, the hatred in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart deepened. This Yu Xiqing was truly hateful. In the future, she would definitely bring Yu Xiqing to her parents and let them deal with her. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun quickly walked to Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao and used their weapons to cut the metal chains. After Mu Lingbing regained her freedom, she didn't care about anything else. She tightly held on to Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, "Are you Yishuan? You must be Yishuan." Although she had only seen Lan Yishuan when she was young and had not seen her for so many years, kinship was just that special. She could tell that the person in front of her was her daughter. Lan Yunxiao also couldn't help looking at Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't even have the heart to ask why she saved them. "Yishuan?" When Bailey Hongzhuang heard this name, she raised her eyebrows. It seemed that this was her real name. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Father, Mother, I'm here to save you." Hearing her words, Mu Lingbing's tears flowed uncontrollably, tightly gripping Bailey Hongzhuang's hands, unwilling to let go. It was as if everything would disappear as soon as she let it go. Lan Yunxiao's hands gradually clenched in a fist with unconcealable excitement on his face. He had never thought that one day his daughter would actually come to save him. This was simply unimaginable. But now it actually happened. Not only did his daughter survive, but she was also doing so well. She actually had the ability to save them. At this moment, even the iron-willed Lan Yunxiao couldn't help but tear up. All these years, no matter what kind of torture and pain he had suffered, he had never shed a tear. Chapter 2027. Mu Ling Bing and Lan Yunxiao couldn't control their emotions when they heard the words father and mother. This was the greatest expectation of their lives. They didn't expect that they would actually have the hope of seeing their daughter in their lifetime. How could they not be excited? Yunxiao, I'm not dreaming, right? Mu Ling Bing looked at Lan Yunxiao with teary eyes. The scene before her made her feel like she was in a dream. Lan Yunxiao put his hand on Mu Ling Bing's shoulder. This isn't a dream. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was also filled with excitement. She had been thinking about what kind of expression she would have when she saw Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing. Would she be able to call them father and mother? However, the moment he saw them, these two words came out his mouth so easily. She didn't force herself to do it. It was as if she had called them father and mother many times. It was all because of her that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing had suffered for so many years. How could she not accept such great parents other than being grateful? However, this wasn't the time to reminisce. Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly said, Father, Mother, Yu Siqing will only be away for a while and will be back soon. We must leave before she comes back. Let's go first. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing recovered from their excitement at Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Their daughter's ability to save them had completely exceeded their expectations. However, Yu Siqing's strength was very formidable. Once Yu Siqing came back, none of them would be able to leave. They had been imprisoned here for so many years. Being able to see their daughter again was already a blessing from the heavens. But they absolutely couldn't drag their daughter down. All right, we'll leave immediately. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing were nervous. As long as they could leave successfully, they would be able to reunite with their daughter in the future. This was a scene they had dreamed of for so many years. However, as they walked forward, they realized that after being imprisoned for so many years, their bodies had long been exhausted. Not to mention leaving Yutian City, it was difficult for them to even walk to the surface. Noticing this, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing's expressions were extremely unsightly. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were already very difficult to sneak in. If they brought them along, it would be too conspicuous. Yishuan, you should leave. We can't leave in our current condition. Lan Yunxiao's resolute and handsome face was filled with seriousness and helplessness. With such a good opportunity in front of them, it was truly sad that they couldn't leave. But none of this was as important as their daughter. Yishuan, if we leave, we'll definitely be discovered. Mu Ling Bing nodded. To be able to see you again in this lifetime, I'm already content. Mu Ling Bing's eyes sparkled. She felt an indescribable sense of satisfaction at the thought that not only did her daughter survive, but she also grew up to be so outstanding. Since she was young, they had never done anything for their daughter, causing her to suffer so much pain for no reason. How could they drag their daughter down now? After hearing Mu Ling Bing and Lan Yunxiao's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was moved. This was kinship. Chapter 2028. In her previous life, although she had a group of elders who cared for her, she had never seen her parents. In this life, she had also never seen her parents in the first 10 years of her life. However, she could feel the love that her parents had for her from all these things. And now, the feeling in her heart was even deeper. Perhaps only the greatest power, kinship, could make her parents give up everything without hesitation. Father, Mother, since we've come to save you, we've definitely thought of a way to bring you away. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, but her smile was filled with an unprecedented emotion. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Di Beichen nodded. Let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled at Di Beichen's words. In the next instant, she brought Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing into the chaos ring. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing were originally very worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would let her emotions affect her decisions. All these years, they had only been able to survive because of their own stubbornness. Their physical strength had long been depleted, and they were no longer the Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing of the past. However, when the two of them reacted, they found themselves in another place. Baisher immediately came out to welcome Bailey Hongzhuang when he saw her enter the chaos ring. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Ling Bing looked at everything in front of them in astonishment. They didn't understand what had happened and why they had suddenly appeared in another place. "Yixuan, where are we?" Mu Ling Bing couldn't help but ask. "This is another space, similar to a storage space. It's just that living people can also enter." Bailey Hongzhuang explained simply. "Father, Mother, I still have to go out and do something with Di Bei-chun. You should rest here first and wait for us to take care of everything before we pick you up." They were only halfway through their plan and hadn't completely solved it. Moreover, she had made the bomb herself, so she naturally had to give the Yu family a big gift. Although she already knew that her parents were not doing well these days, she was still shocked when she saw it with her own eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was already filled with anger, but she didn't show it in front of her parents. Mu Lingbing couldn't help but worry when she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. It wasn't easy for her to see her daughter. She didn't want her daughter to be in danger. At a time like this, Lan Yunxiao clearly thought things through and immediately said, "Hurry and go." The young man from before also looked extremely outstanding. Since he was willing to accompany Yi Xian to do such a dangerous thing, his relationship with Yi Xian must be extremely close. It was very possible that that man was Yi Xian's sweetheart. At this time, if that man was left alone outside, Yi Xian would definitely not be at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and then said to Baisher, "Baisher, keep my parents company for a while. I'll come back once I'm done." "Master, don't worry." The white lion hurriedly spoke. It would definitely help its master take good care of its master's parents. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang left the primordial chaos ring and appeared outside. Chapter 2029. Under such circumstances, Yu Siqing was not in the mood to attend the banquet. Therefore, after staying for a short while, she decided to go back. After seeing Yu Siqing's actions, Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan were also puzzled. Although everyone was urging Yu Siqing to stay, Yu Siqing still insisted on going back to take a look. No matter what, she was still worried about the aura that had suddenly appeared. Even though she had checked many times and did not see anyone, this matter still made her feel very uneasy. She trusted her sixth sense very much. Since she was so uneasy, she might as well go back and take a look. After Bailey Hongzhuang appeared beside Di Bei-chun, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, they quickly left Yu Siqing's house. Bailey Hongzhuang had a faint feeling that Yu Siqing was a very difficult woman to deal with. The aura that she had accidentally revealed earlier must have made Yu Siqing apprehensive. Therefore, it was better for them to leave as soon as possible. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bei-chun left Yu Siqing's house, Bailey Hongzhuang directly threw an explosive inside. This explosive was a powerful one that she had specially prepared. Because she was worried about all kinds of situations, she made a very long lead that was enough for her and Di Bei-chun to leave Yu Manlan's residence. Di Bei-chun saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had thought of everything so well and praised her in his heart. Hongzhuang's parents had been imprisoned in this place for so many years. Presumably, Hongzhuang also hated this place to the bone. It was naturally excellent that an explosive could raze this place to the ground. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's movements were also very fast. After splitting up, they quickly scattered the poisonous powder where it should be scattered. One had to know that the speed of these two beasts was completely trained in the desert world. In addition, with their figures, no one would notice them at all. They were completely unscrupulous. After completing the task given by their master, they quickly gathered and headed to the place they had agreed upon with their master. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bei-chun left Yu Siqing's house, they soon saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder with a smug look on their faces. Master, we've done what you asked us to do, Xiao He and Xiao Bai said excitedly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, well done. Now, as long as we throw these bombs out, we can leave quickly, Di Beichen said. Who would have thought that there would be no need to use a bomb during a banquet? However, since they were already here, they naturally couldn't bring these bombs back. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai quickly took action. They picked up the bombs and ignited them, throwing them into the Yu clan. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out, shaking the entire Yu clan. All the people with status in the Yu clan were at the banquet. Suddenly, there was such a commotion from afar. The Yu clan members were shocked for a moment, their faces filled with astonishment. There are actually criminals who came to our Yu clan to commit such atrocities. They must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's guts. After the Yu clan members regained their senses, their faces were filled with anger. How powerful was the Yu clan? Chapter 2030. Everyone, let's go and take a look. We must catch these villains and teach them a lesson. Damn it, once I catch them, I'll make them wish they were dead. The Yu clan had been in the Shengxian continent for so many years, and such a thing had rarely happened. This was Yutian City. If this news were to spread, wouldn't they become a joke? After seeing this scene, Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyin's eyes were filled with astonishment. They didn't expect such a thing to happen. Today's banquet couldn't continue. Yin, could it be that today's incident has something to do with us? Yu Manlan frowned. They had just arrived at the Yu clan, and such a thing had already happened. If it was because of them, it would be very bad. Hearing this, Lan Qingyin waved her hand. There were very few people who knew that we would be here today. It's definitely not because of us. Mother, don't worry. Yu Manlan nodded slightly and felt a little relieved. Thinking about it, it must have been done by some people who were dissatisfied with the Yu clan. However, such a move was unwise. Mother, since such a thing has happened, there's no point for us to continue staying here. Why don't we go and take a look? She also wanted to know what kind of person dared to offend the Yu clan. Moreover, the power of these explosives was very strong. Hearing Lan Qingyin's words, Yu Manlan came back to her senses and immediately said, okay, let's go and take a look. Compared to the anger of the Yu clan members, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were very happy to throw the bombs. One by one, the bombs were thrown out by them, followed by a huge explosion. Seeing the Yu clan's buildings being blown up, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an indescribable joy in her heart. Although this kind of action wouldn't cause much damage to the Yu clan, it was a real slap to their face. For a cultivation family, the most important thing was their face. With this slap, the Yu clan would definitely be furious. Yu Xiqing felt that something was wrong and went to her house. However, before she reached her house, she heard the sound of the bombs. Seeing this, Yu Xiqing rushed to the location of the explosion. Who knew where this scoundrel came from? How dare he be so bold? Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and the two beasts threw the bombs very quickly. After throwing all the bombs, they quickly left the Yu clan. The Yu clan's people had already rushed over because of the commotion. The longer they stayed here, the more dangerous it would be for them. Moreover, both of them had a certain level of awareness towards danger. Faintly, they could feel danger approaching. Not long after Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen left, Yu Xiqing was already standing where Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were standing. Yu Xiqing frowned when she sensed the familiar aura. This aura was the same one she had sensed outside the house. Although it was only for a short moment, she was still able to determine it. It seemed that her previous judgment was not wrong. Someone really did appear there. However, the other party was very powerful and had already left before she came out. When did they offend such a powerful expert? Chapter 2031. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen quickly left the Yu clan, following the escape route that Mo Yunjue had set for them. This route was the most unexpected one. They directly passed through the entire Yu clan and escaped in the other direction of Yutian City. Almost everyone would be rushing towards Yutian City to investigate, so no one would notice them. After Lan Qingyin left the banquet, she slowly walked towards the direction of the explosion. This was the Yu clan, not the Lan clan. Therefore, she was not very anxious about such an incident. After all, the Yu clan was a medical family. Once someone failed to seek medical treatment, it was normal for them to think of ways to take revenge. However, from the fluctuations, the Yu clan's losses this time were not small. Just as Lan Qingyin was slowly walking forward, she suddenly saw two black figures flashing by not far away. Seeing this, Lan Qingyin's gaze immediately fell on the two black figures. With this look, Lan Qingyin saw a handsome face that was so beautiful that it was as if it belonged in a painting. His handsomeness could not be described with words. Even if his handsome eyebrows were tightly knitted and his thin lips were slightly pursed, he still had an indescribable charm. She had never seen such a perfect face before. It made it hard for her to breathe. Just as Lan Qingyin was in a daze, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's figures had already disappeared from her sight. When Lan Qingyin regained her senses, she could not help but feel annoyed in her heart. That kind of man, that kind of temperament, how could he be an ordinary person? Yu Manlan quickly caught up with Lan Qingyin and said, "Qingyin, why are you still here? A lot of places have been blown up. Let's go take a look." Just as Yu Manlan said this, an earth-shattering explosion resounded. Boom! This earth-shattering explosion caused the entire Yutian city's ground to tremble. This sound was more powerful than any of the previous sounds, deafening everyone's ears. Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyin's figures swayed on the ground, and a huge cloud of dust quickly spread out. Both of their eyes were filled with shock. What is this? Lan Qingyin looked at Yu Manlan in disbelief. Such a big movement was completely beyond her expectations. She found it hard to believe that it was caused by a bomb. That was because explosives could never cause such a huge commotion. I don't know. Only an extremely powerful expert could cause such a huge commotion. Could it be that today's situation isn't as simple as we thought? Yu Manlan immediately pulled Lan Qingyin and rushed forward. Although she had married into the Lan family, she was still a part of the Yu family in her heart. If the Yu clan had offended some formidable opponent, it would be extremely troublesome. Lan Qingyin's mind kept replaying the face that she saw before. She was sure that she wasn't dreaming. Everything was real. "Qingyin, why do I feel like this movement is coming from the direction of your Grey Tant's residence?" Yu Manlan pondered. Hearing this, Lan Qingyin finally recovered from her thoughts. The secret of Yu Siqing's residence could not be exposed. If the commotion really came from there, then it would be terrible. Let's go take a look. Lan Qingyin straightened her expression. She should have directly killed Lan Yunxiao and Yu Manlan, and she wouldn't have to worry about these things. Chapter 2032. Yu Siqing's face turned ugly when she heard the explosion. She was almost certain that her house was at the center of the explosion. At this moment, she finally understood why she had been feeling uneasy all this time. So this was where the problem lay. Originally, when she saw the explosion in other places, she only thought that the culprit wanted to cause trouble for the Yu family. Now it seemed that she was one of the targets. Besides a limited number of people, no one else knew about the tunnel in the house. Now that such a huge explosion had occurred, the entire house and even the tunnel had been razed to the ground. They were her bargaining chips. If Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing died just like that, she would be very unhappy. In the next moment, Yu Siqing quickly rushed into the house. She only wanted to know who the damn bastard was that dared to do such a thing. Once she found out, she would definitely make the culprit regret being born into this world. At the same time, the Yu family's cultivators all rushed to Yu Siqing's house. With such a huge commotion, they also wanted to see the consequences. When they arrived at Yu Siqing's house, almost everyone couldn't help but gasp, only to see that Yu Siqing's house had long disappeared, turning into ruins that covered the sky. A huge crater quietly appeared, shocking everyone. Not only Yu Siqing's house, many other houses in the vicinity were also affected and razed to the ground. On the ground, spiderweb-like cracks spread out. It was a ghastly sight. Oh my God, isn't this destructive power a little too strong? All the houses in this area were blown to smithereens. How much does this person hate Yu Siqing to be able to do such a thing? Yu Siqing's temperament has always been very strange. These years, she has offended many people. It's expected that someone would seek revenge. Even in the Yu family, Yu Siqing's reputation was not much better. This was because Yu Siqing's temper was notoriously strange. As long as she was the slightest bit dissatisfied, she could ruthlessly teach them a lesson. It was because of this that the younger generation of the Yu family were unwilling to ask Yu Siqing even if they didn't know anything about medicine. However, Yu Siqing was still an outstanding figure in the Yu family. At this moment, a young disciple noticed the existence of a tunnel in the crater and couldn't help but be shocked. "Look, there's actually a tunnel there." As his voice fell, the gazes of the other disciples also landed on the passageway. That's right, there really is a passageway. It's really surprising. No wonder the crater here is so big. It turns out that there was a secret room below, but now it has been blown up. For a time, the group of young disciples looked at each other. They couldn't help but wonder why there was a secret room here. For so many years, no one knew that there was a secret room under Yu Siqing's residence. No wonder Yu Siqing liked to stay in the house for so many years. Maybe she spent all her time in the secret room. Moreover, Yu Siqing was still unmarried. As a result, many of the young disciples had strange thoughts in their minds. Perhaps the person living in this secret room was Yu Siqing's old lover. Chapter 2033. Quite a few disciples had already arrived at the scene, and their discussions were mixed with some negative remarks. Yu Siqing looked at the flattened house with a complicated expression. With so many people around, she couldn't check on Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's situation. However, from the looks of the ruins, if Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were still in the dungeon, they would have died without a complete corpse. The Yu clan head and various elders also came to Yu Siqing's house. Although there were explosions in other places, it was obvious that Yu Siqing's house was the most serious. Moreover, with Yu Siqing's status in the Yu clan, they naturally came to check on the situation. However, when the Yu clan's clan master and the group of elders saw this scene, their faces turned ugly. Not everyone in the Yu clan was unaware of what Yu Siqing had done. At least, the Yu clan head knew. However, Yu Siqing had hidden it well these past few years, so he didn't take it to heart. He didn't expect everything to be exposed today. It really exceeded their expectations. When Yu Siqing saw the Yu clan head's gaze, her expression turned gloomy. At this moment, she only hoped that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were dead. Otherwise, once this news spread, the Lan clan wouldn't let it go easily. The Yu clan and the Lan clan had been in-laws for so many years, so they had a certain understanding of the Lan clan's attitude. Although Yu Manlan and Lan Yunxiao had forcefully taken the rainbow pearl from Lan Yishuan and transferred it to Lan Qingyin, the situation had already escalated. At that time, the Lan family didn't allow Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing to attack Lan Jingquang's family because they didn't want to lose the rainbow pearl. However, this didn't mean that the Lan clan didn't remember this matter. At least, in the Lan clan head's heart, this matter had never passed. Otherwise, the Lan clan head wouldn't have passed the position of clan head to Lan Jingquang for so many years. It was obvious that the Lan clan head was unwilling to forgive Lan Jingquang for this matter. If the Lan clan head knew that it was the Yu clan who had imprisoned Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, the friendship between the two clans would probably be reduced to nothing. Suddenly, Yu Siqing frowned. She smelled something strange amidst the smell of explosives. Although this smell was very subtle and mixed with the smell of gunpowder, Yu Siqing had been a doctor for so many years and was very familiar with many smells. Her sixth sense told her that there was something wrong with the smell. She immediately said, "Everyone, hold your breath. There might be something wrong with the smell." When Yu Siqing finished speaking, everyone present was stunned for a moment. However, they immediately listened to her and held their breaths. After all, Yu Siqing's medical skills were very convincing. "What's wrong with that?" Yu clan's clan master asked. "I think there's another smell here other than the smell of explosives. Anyway, it's better to be careful," Yu Siqing said slowly. She didn't know if her judgment was right, but it was better to be careful at this time. Hearing this, the Yu clan patriarch nodded his head. The other party had suddenly made things difficult for the Yu clan, so it was better to be careful. Chapter 2034. Hearing the explosion, the Yu clan head and the other Yu clan members' expressions all changed. This was because the sound clearly came from the Martial Skills Hall. The Martial Skills Hall was the most important place in the entire clan. If something happened to the Martial Skills Hall, then they would suffer a disastrous loss. The Yu clan's disciples all widened their eyes. They had never thought that the Martial Arts Hall would also encounter this kind of problem. It was simply too unexpected. Within a few seconds of hearing the explosion, the Yu clan head and a group of elders quickly left Yu Siqing's residence and rushed to the Martial Skills Hall. The Martial Skills Hall has always been guarded. There shouldn't be any problems. Usually, when someone enters the Martial Skills Hall, they would be discovered immediately. However, the explosion was so powerful that even if it was placed far away, it would still affect the Martial Skills Hall. Let's quickly go and take a look. If the Martial Skills Hall really has a problem, then I don't know what to do. When Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan arrived, they saw this scene. Although they were shocked by the situation in the Yu clan's Martial Skills Hall, the two of them, as well as Yu Siqing, stayed in place without leaving. There were so many people before that they didn't have the chance to pay attention to the situation in the dungeon. Now that everyone's attention was attracted by the news about the Martial Skills Hall, they didn't notice this place at all. This gave them chance. When everyone disappeared from Yu Siqing's sight, Yu Siqing looked down at the ruins. However, there were broken walls all around, so she couldn't see clearly. Great Aunt, you can't expose this news. Lan Qingyin, who originally didn't care, couldn't help but worry when she saw the state of Yu Siqing's room. Their status in the Lan clan was extremely high, but if the Lan clan knew that they had imprisoned Lan Yunxiao and his wife for so many years, their reputation would quickly plummet. The clan head would definitely be dissatisfied with them. After all, they were from the Lan clan. Aunt, what should we do now? Yu Manlan's face was filled with anxiety. She should have killed Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. Now that something like this had happened, she didn't know whether they were dead or alive. What Yu Manlan hoped the most was that Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxi were dead. That way, as long as they cleaned up the corpses, there wouldn't be any other problems. I know. Yu Siqing's tone was icy cold, revealing a trace of impatience. Today's events were beyond her expectations. However, she could faintly sense the aura of a conspiracy. So many places in the Yu clan had been bombed, which had originally dispelled her worries. However, now that her residence had been bombed to such a state, in addition to the aura she had felt outside her house, could it be that the other party had come here for her? When this thought appeared in Yu Siqing's mind, her face turned ugly. If that was the case, the other party would wait until she left before making a move. Could their target be Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing in the dungeon? However, other than Situ Yin, no one else in this world would pay attention to this matter. Chapter 2035. When Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyin saw Yu Siqing's unhappy expression, they didn't dare to say anything else. After all, they had a certain understanding of Yu Siqing's temper. If they angered Yu Siqing, the result would not be good. Thus, even though Lan Qingyin and Yu Manlan were very anxious, they didn't dare to show it. They could only hope that this wouldn't happen. As Yu Siqing lifted a piece of the wreckage, Lan Qingyin and the others noticed the bloodstains on the ground. It was clearly badly mutilated. Seeing this, Yu Manlan couldn't help but sigh in relief. Her eyes were filled with joy. All along, she had hoped that Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing would disappear from this world. Once they were dead, everything would be over. However, Yu Siqing and Lan Jingquang had never agreed. She didn't expect that today's incident would actually help her. Now, she didn't need to sleep at night and worry about being exposed one day. When Lan Qingyin saw the bloodstains on the ground, her eyes also revealed a trace of joy. Yu Manlan and Yu Siqing had never hidden anything from her. She knew that the rainbow sacred pearl in her body was stolen from Lan Yishuan. However, she didn't care at all, because the rainbow sacred pearl was hers. As the owner of the rainbow sacred pearl, her status in the Lan family was unparalleled. Similarly, only she could understand the power of the seven-color divine pearl. She could only say that the younger sister she had never met was unlucky. If the rainbow's sacred pearl hadn't appeared in her body, then this wouldn't have happened. Many things were predestined from the moment they were born. Perhaps the heavens had arranged Lan Yixuan's birth to make a wedding dress for her. Otherwise, how could Lan Yixuan have such a short life? So what if Lan Yunxiao was glorious in the past? After being a prisoner for so many years, he was no longer the same as before. His body was exhausted and useless. Speaking of which, Lan Yunxiao's family was their stepping stone. There was no need to care about them. After all, the Lan family was their world. She couldn't be bothered to care about the history of the past. When Yu Siqing saw the bloodstains on the ground, her worry dissipated a little. In that case, the other party might have done this because she wasn't willing to help. Over the years, she had been unwilling to save many people. It was normal. When Yu clan members arrived at the martial art hall, they saw that the martial arts hall had collapsed. The elder who was guarding the martial arts hall had an ugly expression as he looked at the collapsed martial arts hall. All these years, they had been guarding the martial skills hall, and such a problem had never occurred. That was because no one dared to force their way in. He never thought that something like this would happen today. Chief Elder, why did something like this happen? The Yu clan patriarch's face was extremely ugly. The martial arts hall was the foundation of the Yu clan, and now it had actually collapsed with a loud bang. Once this news spread out, the entire Yu clan would become a joke. Moreover, judging from the current situation, they had suffered great losses. The chief elder's expression was extremely ugly. He did not expect such a thing to happen. Previously, he had not sensed any movement at all. When the sudden explosion occurred, he could only quickly leave the martial arts hall when he discovered it. Chapter 2036. When the head elder said this, he also felt embarrassed. As the head elder, his strength was needless to say. Now that the martial arts hall had become like this, he actually didn't know what had happened. It was really too embarrassing. Hearing the head elder's words, the Yu clan head and the other elders carefully looked around and understood what had happened. The head elder was usually only concerned about the martial arts hall situation. As long as no one barged into the martial arts hall, he didn't need to care. Normally, people who came to the martial arts hall would want the martial arts hall's martial arts hall. After all, their Yu clan was an aristocratic family of cultivators. The martial arts hall's martial arts hall were all extremely high level. Who would have thought that the other party would place the explosives at a certain distance from the martial arts hall? Furthermore, the other party was not interested in the martial arts hall at all. Where did such a weirdo come from? When Yu clan people saw this scene, they were really speechless. The martial arts hall had collapsed just like that. This was definitely not a small loss. We must find out who did this. I must kill them. The Yu clan head's face was as gloomy as water. He had been a Yu clan head for so many years, but this had never happened before. It was really too infuriating. Yes, we must find the culprit and make him suffer a fate worse than death. Daring to offend our Yu clan, he must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. The Yu clan elders all expressed their opinions. The other party's actions were no different from a ruthless slap to their faces. It was abnormally loud. Such a big commotion had attracted almost everyone in Yutian City. Even if they wanted to hide this news, they couldn't hide it. Therefore, if they wanted to restore the Yu clan's reputation, they could only catch the culprit. Otherwise, it would be a huge loss of face for him. Just when the Yu clan people were furious and wanted to bring the culprit to justice, an explosion followed, causing all the Yu clan people's faces to darken to the extreme. The shocking explosion shocked everyone. They thought that this matter was over, but they didn't expect that the place where the explosion came from made them even more speechless. Because the place where the explosion came from was obviously their ancestral hall. Ancestral hall, how important was that place? It was the place where the clan's inheritance was located. Now, it had actually exploded. Just by looking at the state of the martial arts hall, everyone was almost certain that the ancestral hall had been razed to the ground. The Yu clan patriarch's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Now that such a thing had happened, how could he face the Yu clan's ancestors? If this news were to spread out, it would not only be a slap to the face, the entire Yu clan would become a laughing stock unable to extricate themselves from it for many years. Investigate. Find out who did this, and I'll tear him to pieces. The Yu-Clan master roared. The veins on his temples bulged, and his face instantly flushed red. This was definitely a huge stain in his life. No matter who dared to do such a thing, he would make that person suffer a fate worse than death. The group of elders looked at each other in dismay. Their faces were also ugly to the extreme. The position that the other party was attacking was so special. Furthermore, they didn't want anything at all. They only wanted to destroy the Yu-Clan. How much did they hate the Yu-Clan to do such a thing? Under the orders of the Yu-Clan master, everyone no longer had the mood to calculate the losses of the Yu-Clan this time. Instead, they started to investigate the main culprit. Chapter 2037. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun left the Yu-Clan, they headed towards the direction that they had prepared earlier. At the same time, Mo Yunjue's other two underlings had also replaced her and Di Beichun's identities in the afternoon. This way, Mo Yunjue would also be able to escape suspicion. This was undoubtedly the best outcome. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. Even though they were already a distance away from the Yu-Clan, she could still hear the Yu-Clan's roars. The martial arts hall, the ancestral hall, these are the most important places in the Yu-Clan. After this incident, the Yu-Clan's mood could be imagined. Thinking of Yu-Clan's angry faces, Bailey Hongzhuang felt an indescribable joy in her heart. However, this was only the interest that she had collected for now. It wouldn't be long before she would let the Yu-Clan know what true pain was. Master, the Yu-Clan's people have already gone crazy from anger. Xiao Hei's face was full of excited smiles. If it could, it really wanted to stay in the Yu-Clan to see their expressions. Master is a professional face-slapping expert. The entire Yutian city is in an uproar. It would be strange if the Yu-Clan's people didn't die from anger. Xiaobai couldn't help but laugh out loud. Those despicable people, it's time for them to be punished. Haha. Good and evil will always have their retribution. Bailey Hongzhuang's exquisite face was full of carefree smiles. Ever since she knew about her parents' situation, she hadn't laughed so happily for a long time. At least, her parents were safe and sound now. The heavens were not so cruel to her. She still had a chance to reunite with her parents. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that the huge rock that had been pressing on her heart had finally been lifted. Although there were still many things to do, the thing that she was most worried about would not happen. She could also relax a little. Di Beichun looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was laughing heartily. His eyes were also filled with joy. These days, seeing how Hongzhuang worked so hard, he couldn't help but feel heartache. Although Hongzhuang had never shown any signs of stress or sadness, he had always understood. At this moment, when he saw Hongzhuang smile, he felt that it was more precious than anything else. Wife, I found that the explosives this time are much more powerful than the ones made by the palace master's wife. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with astonishment. Previously, when he was in the Limitless Palace, he had witnessed the power of explosives with his own eyes. However, judging from the fluctuations produced by the Yu-Clan just now, this fluctuation was obviously much more powerful than what he had seen before. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "This is a big gift that I have specially prepared for the Yu-Clan." The power of the explosives made by Master's wife was naturally not small, but it was very difficult to blow up the Martial Skills Hall. The Martial Skills Hall was much sturdier than other places. Moreover, she knew that there would definitely be people guarding the Martial Skills Hall, so she had to keep a certain distance from the Martial Skills Hall. Otherwise, they would have been discovered before they could even set up the explosives. It was precisely because of this that she had to specially prepare these powerful explosives. In this way, the people in the Martial Skills Hall would not be on guard. Naturally, the effect would be unexpected. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's eyes were filled with astonishment. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so thoughtful. Chapter 2038. Today, Di Beichun also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had learned how to make explosives in the Chaos Ring. Obviously, such powerful explosives were made by Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Baichen couldn't help but sigh at his wife's prowess. No matter what it was, Hong Zhuang always learned it extremely quickly. This kind of talent and comprehension was not something that ordinary people could have. Thinking back, when he left Limitless Palace, Hong Zhuang had just started to learn about explosives. Until now, it hadn't been long, but Bailey Hong Zhuang had already mastered explosives to such a level. Other than her, no one else could do it. Wife, what you did this time really gave the Yu clan a headache. Di Baichen's face was full of smiles. The Yu clan was so hateful. He only hoped that the Yu clan could get the punishment they deserved. As long as his wife was happy, that was enough. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, he had a certain understanding of the cultivation families. The ancestral hall, the martial arts hall, these were the foundation of the clan. Hong Zhuang's actions definitely made the Yu clan lose face. Hearing Di Baichen's words, Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. Since we have already come here, we naturally have to leave some impression on them. The next time we come, I will give them a big gift that will be even more impressive than this time. Di Baichen looked deeply at Bailey Hong Zhuang. He didn't doubt Bailey Hong Zhuang's ability at all. Although the Yu clan was a huge clan, Hong Zhuang always had a special kind of power that made people believe in her. No matter how hard it was to climb the mountain in front of them, they could climb it one by one. After we go back, we must properly understand the Yu clan's actions. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled lightly. She really wanted to know how furious the Yu clan would be after such a thing. Di Baichen nodded, a hint of slyness in his smile. That's a must. Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Baichen looked at each other. Their smiles deepened, but their footsteps didn't slow down at all. The Yu clan's reaction speed was very fast. Once the Yu clan reacted, they would immediately chase after them. Even if they hadn't been discovered before, they still had to hurry up now. This area was within the Yu clan's sphere of influence. They would only be truly safe after leaving this area. Master, after we rescued your parents, why did we create the illusion that they were already dead? Little Black looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang curiously. Originally, he thought that as long as they left, it would be fine. He didn't expect that his master would set up such a trap. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with a calm and quiet light. Now is not the time to let them know. Once Yu Siqing and the rest know, they will definitely follow the vine to the melon and find Tiangang sect very quickly. This way, Lan Jingquang and his family would be prepared. And I want to catch them off guard when they're completely unprepared. Lan Jingquang and his family were so despicable, but they still pretended to be dignified. She wouldn't give them a chance to confess. She wanted to rip off their hypocritical masks when they were unprepared. Chapter 2039. Following Bailey Hong Zhuang's words, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's hearts shook. They hadn't thought of so many problems before. They hadn't expected their master to have already thought of everything. Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes were filled with resentment. Lan Jingquang's family had stolen everything that belonged to her family, and even tortured her father and mother into such a state. Now, they had a chance to turn the tables. She wanted Lan Jingquang's family to experience what it felt like to fall into an abyss. They'd lived in glory for so many years, doing their best to hide their despicable deeds. However, paper couldn't wrap fire. There would be a day when they would be exposed. Moreover, the longer they hid, the more serious the consequences would be once they were exposed. Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice was cold without any warmth. Di Baichen could also feel the bone-deep hatred in Bailey Hong Zhuang's words. Actually, he knew very well. Today, when they saw Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing's tortured appearance, even his heart was filled with shock. The two of them, once famous, had been reduced to prisoners. Hideous wounds covered their bodies, their faces were pale, and their footsteps were weak. Back then, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were extremely famous figures. They were powerful and had strong bodies. However, so many years of torture had turned them into this state. They couldn't even stand properly after walking a few steps. Only Hong Zhuang knew how much of an impact this scene had on Hong Zhuang. He wanted to comfort Hong Zhuang, but he knew it was useless. All of this could only be repaid by Lan Jingquang's family. Time had been too tight, so they didn't have time to say much and left quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen moved quickly. The Yu clan's response was equally shocking. Almost as soon as the Yu clan gave the order, everyone in Yutian City began to move. In an instant, Yutian City was brightly lit. Every passageway was filled with people as they quickly chased after the culprit who had left. Under these circumstances, even the Yu clan's elders couldn't hold themselves back and began to move. With such a huge commotion, the other clans would receive the news in a short time. If they didn't capture the culprits as soon as possible, they would lose all face. Mo Yunjue and his subordinates had already returned to the house, pretending not to know anything. Young Master, Miss Bailey, and young Sect Master D have caused quite a commotion this time. A subordinate reported the situation to Mo Yunjue. They had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would leave after rescuing them, but they didn't expect so many things would happen. It's too unexpected. Mo Yunjue was also shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. With such a huge commotion, the entire Yutian city was shaken. Thinking back to Hongzhuang's expression when she said she wanted to leave some gifts for the Yu clan, he really didn't expect that Hongzhuang would do such a thing. But now, it seemed that Hongzhuang's every move was extraordinary. What did Hongzhuang do? Mo Yunju asked. Chapter 2040. Reporting to Young Master, Lady Bailey has blown up Yu Siqing's residence. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows. He had previously felt that this movement was very shocking, but he didn't know how Hongzhuang did it. Now it seemed that Hongzhuang had prepared explosives. Only Yu Siqing's residence? Mo Yunjue followed up and asked. He heard several explosions, and they didn't come from the same place. Not only that, there was also the Yu clan's martial arts hall and the ancestral hall. When the cultivator from Shutian Pavilion said this, there was a hint of surprise on his face. He felt that this Lady Bailey was really a god. This kind of destructive power, ordinary people really couldn't do it. The martial arts hall was a place heavily guarded by the Yu clan, but Lady Bailey blew it up without saying anything. This kind of courage was really amazing. As for the ancestral hall, he really admired Lady Bailey's brain. Ordinary people really couldn't think of such a bad thing for Yan Er. After such a thing happened, it would be strange if the Yu clan wasn't flustered and exasperated. The ancestral tablets were gone. Even if they were rebuilt, it would be a stain in the Yu clan's history that was difficult to cover up. For someone like Lady Bailey to not stay in their Shutian tower, it would be a waste of her talent. Following this cultivator's words, the other cultivators in the room couldn't help but smile, but they didn't laugh out loud. The Yu clan was really unlucky this time. Mo Yunjue raised his beautiful lips, and a hint of interest appeared on his extraordinarily handsome face. Hongzhuang's character really didn't change at all. The Yu clan provoked Hongzhuang. That was really a tragedy. Well done. Mo Yunjue chuckled, and then his gaze fell on the cultivators who were trying their best to hold back their laughter. If you want to laugh, then laugh. No need to hold it in. What Hongzhuang did this time, except for the Yu clan, everyone couldn't help but laugh. As soon as he said this, the group of cultivators couldn't help but laugh out loud. This kind of thing, Bailey Hongzhuang was really the best. You should pay attention to the Yu clan's movements. If there's any news, come and tell me. Mo Yunjue's eyes flashed with wisdom. Based on his understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were probably not limited to this. As for what else was there, that was something they needed to pay close attention to. Yes, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen worked hard to move forward. After a while, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. Seeing this figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen both smiled. Grandfather, Master, Si-Tu Yin put his index finger in front of his lips, signaling Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen not to make sound. In the next moment, Si-Tu Yin directly led Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen into the bushes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen followed behind Si-Tu Yin and quickly hid their breath and breathing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two hid, two figures appeared at the place where Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were just a moment ago. I clearly felt that there were two auras that left here. Why did they suddenly disappear in such a short time? A man who was about 60 years old frowned. and his eyes were filled with doubt. Chapter 2041. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen broke out in cold sweat when they saw the two men. Previously, they had not sensed anyone following them at all. If Situ Yin had not come, they would have been caught by now. Situ Yin glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, signaling them to keep quiet. However, Situ Yin did not look nervous at all. If it was not for the fact that he did not want to alert the enemy, he would have killed the two of them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen naturally knew how powerful Situ Yin was, so they were not worried. Since there was an expert like Situ Yin around, it would be useless no matter how hard the two of them searched. After searching for a while, the two of them returned to their original spot helplessly. Could it be that the other party just disappeared into thin air? Could it be that you sensed wrongly? If not, let's go back quickly. The clan master is furious. Let's not waste any more time. No matter what, we must catch the culprit tonight. The two of them were furious. As the Yu clan's elders, they had never been humiliated like this before. Soon, the two of them left. However, Situ Yin did not stand up. Instead, he continued to hide in the bushes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's eyes were still fixed on the place where they left. As expected, the two of them returned to their original spot after disappearing for a while. After seeing that there was still no one, the two of them frowned even more. After the two of them left again, Bailey Hongzhuang was about to get up, but Situ Yin suddenly pulled her back and said, "Don't be impatient." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with surprise. Then, she stopped moving. In the next moment, the two of them appeared again. Bailey Hongzhuang was shocked. The Yu clan's people were really cautious. They actually came twice. If her grandfather wasn't here, she wouldn't have been able to escape. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's eyes were also filled with admiration. These two fellows were really too cunning. They actually did things so flawlessly. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two waited in the bushes for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn before leaving. The two elders of the Yu clan checked 3 times, but didn't find anyone. Only then did they leave. "Grandfather, if you hadn't come, then we would have been in trouble." Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but sigh. Hearing this, Situ Yin smiled kindly. These two people are the Yu clan's 2 elders who are the best at tracking. Normal people wouldn't be able to hide from them. Back then, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were captured precisely because their tracking skills were too formidable. Situ Yan's eyes turned cold when he said that. With your strength, it's normal that you can't sense their presence. So, you must be more careful in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly, her heart sinking as she remembered the faces of the 2 elders of the Yu family. The next time she sees these 2 fellows, she will definitely kill them. Di Beichen also understood at this moment. No wonder they didn't sense anything before. It turned out that these 2 people's specialty was tracking. "Have you saved your parents?" Situ Yin couldn't help but ask. Chapter 2042. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen smiled at Situ Yin's question. "We've already rescued them." Situ Yin heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. He had thought of doing it himself, but this was a good opportunity for Bailey Hongzhuang. Thus, he wanted to see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's growth. However, he couldn't help but worry. That's good. After all these years, he had never seen his daughter. Although Mu Lingbing had suffered a lot, from now on, all her suffering would end. On one hand, he wanted to make it up to Mu Lingbing. On the other hand, he wanted to know Mu Jin's whereabouts. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Situ didn't say much along the way. The Yu clan could catch up to them at any time. In addition, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies were extremely weak, so they needed to return to Tiangang's sect as soon as possible. However, Bailey Hongzhuang also told Situ Yin that she had the Chaos Ring. Bailey Hongzhuang believed that Situ Yin was her grandfather. When Situ Yin found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had the Chaos Ring, he was completely shocked. However, after knowing the true value of the Chaos Ring, Situ Yin repeatedly warned Bailey Hongzhuang not to tell anyone else about it. Otherwise, once others found out about it, it would bring about a fatal disaster. Back then, Lan Yinxiao and Mu Lingbing were 2 outstanding, so they were framed by Lan Jingquang and his family. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Bailey Hongzhuang being able to obtain the Chaos Ring was a great opportunity for her. However, if she didn't hide it well, it would be a disaster. Bailey Hongzhuang had already expected Tian to remind her like this. However, after seeing Tian's vigilant and worried gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a wave of warmth in her heart. In the past, she had been all alone in the Shengxian continent. Now, not only did she have a grandfather, she had also successfully reunited with her parents. This was truly the happiest thing in the world. After telling Tian about this, Bailey Hongzhuang no longer had to be on guard. She immediately entered the Chaos Ring with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. At the same time, Tian and Di Beichun headed towards Tiangang's sect. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had been worried ever since Bailey Hongzhuang left. However, because their bodies were too weak, coupled with their sudden excitement, they had expended a great deal of energy. Under such circumstances, Mu Lingbing couldn't bear it and fainted. When Bailey Hongzhuang entered the Chaos Ring, she saw the unconscious Mu Lingbing. However, Lan Yunxiao persisted. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang arrive, he sighed in relief. He had been so worried that Yixuan would be in danger because of them. As her parents, they hadn't taken good care of her since she was young, causing her to be hurt like that. If Yixuan was still hurt because of them when she grew up, then they really wouldn't have the face to face it. "Master, you're here." Baisher sighed in relief when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang arrive. He had been very worried before, but he couldn't disturb his master in Di Beichun, so he could only wait. Chapter 2043. Your mother's body was too weak, and after that incident, she fainted. Lan Yunxiao spoke slowly, his expression helpless. Long before, when they were locked up in the dungeon, they would often faint. Compared to their robust bodies in the past, their bodies were now extremely weak. As long as something happened or they received some stimulation, they wouldn't be able to bear it. Even as a man, he found it hard to bear, much less Mu Lingbing. Before meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, Yu Manlin's provocation had already caused Mu Lingbing's heart to burn with rage. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, she had sunk into ecstasy. After experiencing such fury and ecstasy, Mu Lingbing's collapse was within expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood when she heard Lan Yunxiao's words. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took Mu Lingbing's pulse. With this pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang's face gradually sank. She had long expected Mu Lingbing's body to be extremely weak, but she hadn't expected it to be to this extent. Not only was she weak, but she also discovered that Mu Lingbing's body was poisoned by many different kinds of lethal poisons. These poisons had different effects, and they intertwined in Mu Lingbing's body. Some counteracted each other, while others used poison to fight poison. It was extremely complicated. It was precisely because of these poisons that Mu Lingbing was so weak. Although Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what these poisons were, she knew that because of them, Mu Lingbing had to endure excruciating pain. "Father, has Yu Siqing been experimenting on you all these years and made you take poison?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked in a low voice. Although it was a question, her tone was certain. Lan Yunxiao's eyes filled with shock at Bailey Hongzhuang's words. "Yixuan, do you know medicine as well?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her gaze landed on Lan Yunxiao's face, but she didn't say anything else. Lan Yunxiao faintly sighed. "That's right. All these years, Yu Siqing has been using us as test subjects and constantly experimenting. In fact, both he and Mu Lingbing had thought about it over the years. Sometimes, after Yu Siqing made them take some things, it was really painful to the point of death. However, in the end, they persevered because of their own beliefs. In the past, Yu Siqing had also made them consume poison, but in the end, they were saved. All along, Yu Siqing had wanted to torture them and make them wish they were dead." Hearing Lan Yunxiao's words, the resentment in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. In the future, she'll definitely capture Yu Siqing and use her to test her poison. She'll have her taste the feeling of not being able to live, not being able to beg for death. When Lan Yunxiao saw Bailey Hongzhuang's increasingly gloomy expression, he couldn't help but ask, "Yixuan, we both understand our bodies. As long as we can see you before we die, we will be satisfied. You mustn't be sad because of us. Living well is our greatest hope." Lan Yunxiao's gaze focused on Bailey Hongzhuang's face, revealing a trace of forbearance and heartache. Unknowingly, his daughter had already grown into such a slender and elegant woman. All these years, they had been absent and didn't know how their daughter had grown up. Chapter 2044. Bailey Hongzhuang could hear an indescribable heartache from Lan Yunxiao's words. She had always been grateful for everything Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had done for her and understood how precious family love was. However, when she heard Lan Yunxiao's words, she felt indescribably moved. Lan Yunxiao's gaze towards her was filled with love and gentleness, like a gentle ocean, warm and boundless. When she sensed Lan Yunxiao's sorrow, she also felt uncomfortable. "Father, although your and Mother's bodies are in bad condition, believe me, I can definitely cure you." Her exquisite and beautiful face shone with confidence. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been interested in medicine, but it wasn't until this moment that she felt it was the greatest value of learning it. Although Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's conditions were terrible, she only needed some time to understand the composition of these poisons. Then she would be able to cure them one by one. As for their weakness, as long as they were properly nourished, she believed it wouldn't take long for them to recover. Lan Yunxiao's face was filled with astonishment as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. He wondered if he had misheard. He was well aware of how terrible his body was. However, Yixuan actually said she had the confidence to cure him. "Don't worry, Master's medical skills are amazing. They're not inferior to Yu Siqing at all." Baisher smiled. "What do you mean by not inferior to Yu Siqing? They're definitely better than Yu Siqing, all right?" Xiaohei immediately stood out to refute Baisher's words. Not many people could compare to his master's medical skills. Even that old monster Yu Siqing was a master's match. When Lan Yunxiao heard Baisher and Xiaohei's words, he finally understood. It turned out that his daughter was so formidable. She had completely exceeded his expectations. Bailey Hongzhuang took out a qi replenishing pill from her cosmos bag and fed it to Mu Lingbing. Mu Lingbing's body was in a terrible condition, so she had to understand it clearly before she could start treating her. If she acted rashly, it was very likely to affect the whole situation. In the next moment, pills quickly appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands. Mu Lingbing's body was too weak right now, and she needed to be nourished. If she wanted to neutralize the poison, she needed Mu Lingbing to have a strong body. Otherwise, it would be difficult to proceed. Fortunately, she and Di Beichen had already expected such a situation to happen, so they had prepared a lot of nourishing pills. Qi replenishing pill, blood replenishing pill, nourishing pill, yang replenishing pill. These medicinal pills all had excellent effects when saving people, and their value was also not cheap. However, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly separated the pills that were suitable for Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao, and then gave a handful to Lan Yunxiao. "Father, take these pills first, then have a good sleep. You'll feel much better when you wake up." Her light and melodious voice was filled with concern. All the suffering Lan Yunxiao and the rest had endured all these years was because of her. When Lan Yunxiao saw Bailey Hongzhuang handing over so many pills, his eyes were filled with amazement. He really wanted to know what Bailey Hongzhuang had experienced all these years. Chapter 2045. However, even though Lan Yunxiao had too many questions in his heart, he didn't voice them out, because now wasn't the time to talk about them. In the next moment, Lan Yunxiao swallowed all the pills Bailey Hongzhuang gave him. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also fed Mu Lingbing pills one by one. Lan Yunxiao was also extremely tired, but he persevered because he was worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that he had relaxed, he couldn't take it anymore and fainted. Bailey Hongzhuang moved Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao onto the bed one by one. Then she carefully checked their pulse, understanding their body's condition. Now that she had saved her parents with great difficulty, How could she accept them leaving like this? Therefore, no matter what, she had to cure her parents. In the future, their family would appear together in the Lan estate and take back everything they had lost. With this determination, Bailey Hongzhuang carefully calculated everything. She took some of Mu Ling Bing and Lan Yunxiao's blood and used it to investigate the composition of their bodies. After more than 10 years of torture, they had taken countless poisons over the years. To detoxify them was a complicated project. The three beasties didn't dare disturb Bailey Hongzhuang when they saw her so busy. Once their master became serious, she was very frightening. Moreover, they were facing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing this time. After Si Tian and Deep Beichun understood the difference in their bodies, their hearts sank. The two of them immediately returned to Tiangang's sect at their fastest speed. Only after they returned would they have many medicinal ingredients and treasures to treat Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang's group was rushing to Tiangang's sect, the Yu clan members' expressions were extremely unsightly. They had already done their best to find a culprit, but in the end, they hadn't found anything. Instead, the culprit had left just like that. This was a resounding slap to the face of every member of the Yu clan. Under these circumstances, they felt extremely helpless. The clan master was furious, and the Yu clan cultivators were suffering unspeakably. The strangest thing was that in the next few days, the Yu clan's cultivators fell down one after another, showing signs of high fever. Among them, the situation was most common among the younger generation of the Yu clan. The Yu clan was a famous medical family. When such a situation occurred, they naturally started to treat the patient immediately. However, after this treatment, they realized that the situation was not as simple as it seemed. It was not something that could be easily cured. On the contrary, the situation was extremely complicated. Furthermore, this medicine was extremely potent. If it was not treated within a few hours, the patient would die. In this way, the Yu clan could be said to have suffered heavy losses. Regardless of whether it was a young disciple or a mainstay, under such a poison, they would only end up dying. Compared to the losses caused by the explosion, this kind of loss was something that the Yu clan could not bear. The Yu clan's people were currently as anxious as ants on a hot pan. All the doctors had gathered together to discuss how to cure the poison. However, no matter how they discussed, they were unable to obtain a sincere answer. Chapter 2046. Within a short period of time, many people in the Yu clan had been infected. For a moment, not only could they not find a way to treat it, they did not even have a way to prevent it from spreading. Some of the Yu clan's doctors were also accidentally infected when they were trying to understand the illness. This was simply spreading to a large number of people. Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan could not help but worry when they saw the Yu clan become such a place. If they were to be infected, they would only end up dying. Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan could not understand why such a thing would happen after they came to the Yu clan. However, under the current situation, it was better for them to leave. If they lost their lives here, it would be really depressing. When Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan left, the expressions of the Yu clan's people were not good. The Yu clan was now shunned by the others. When some of the younger disciples of the Yu clan saw that Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan were about to leave, their expressions were also extremely ugly. In their opinion, this incident happened after Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan came. Moreover, everyone knew that Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan had the best relationship with Yu Siqing. The other party had placed a total of 3 powerful explosives. Other than the 2 extremely important places, the Martial Skills Hall and the Ancestral Hall, the other place was Yu Siqing's residence. In comparison, the explosion of Yu Siqing's residence was the strangest place. Therefore, many people felt that this matter was related to Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan. Perhaps the other party had followed Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan all the way here. Now that such a thing had happened, Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan wanted to leave. Naturally, they were unhappy. After hearing Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan's farewell, the Yu clan master's dignified face became gloomy. Regardless of whether this matter had anything to do with Yu Manlan and Lan Qingyan, they were still part of the Yu clan. Now that they were in such a hurry to leave, one could imagine the pain in his heart. However, after thinking about it, the Yu clan master did not say anything. He just waved his hand and let Yu Man Lan and Lan Qingyin leave. If they continued to stay here, once the two of them were infected, the Lan family would probably be alarmed. However, the Yu clan master was very dissatisfied with Yu Man Lan. The reason why Yu Man Lan was able to obtain such a position in the Lan family was all because of their Yu family. Now that something had happened to her family, Yu Man Lan was actually staying out of it and avoiding it like the plague. It really made people unhappy. Yu Man Lan and Lan Qingyin also knew that the Yu clan was unhappy with them. When they left, almost everyone's attitude towards them was much colder. However, even if they knew this, they still had to consider their own lives. Yin Er, if we leave like this, I'm afraid that the Yu clan will be very dissatisfied with us. Yu Man Lan's face was filled with worry. If the Yu clan no longer supported them because of this matter, it would be a huge loss. All these years, the Lan family head had been unwilling to hand over the position of family head to Lan Jingquan. If it wasn't for the Yu clan's support and suggestion, it would have been impossible for the Lan clan's patriarch to succeed. That old man refused to give up and insisted on waiting for Lan Yunxiao's return. How foolish. Chapter 2047. Hearing Yu Manlan's words, Lan Qingyin didn't seem to care. Because of what happened back then, grandfather has always been dissatisfied, so it's not strange for him to have such a reaction. Even if father can't become the head of the Lan family, isn't there still me? Your bodies are tainted, but it has nothing to do with the young and ignorant me back then. All along, her father had wanted to become the head of the Lan family, but grandfather was also a stubborn person and was unwilling to give up his position all these years. However, whether or not Lan Jingquan could become the head of the Lan family, she didn't care. As long as she was the future head of the Lan family, that was enough. Seeing Lan Qingyin's indifferent appearance, Yu Man Lan couldn't help but frown. Yin Er, no matter what, he's still your father. Why are you so unconcerned about your father's matters? Yu Man Lan felt helpless. Perhaps she had spoiled Lan Qingyin since she was young, but she only thought of herself and didn't care about anything else. What does this matter have to do with me? Lan Qingyin asked back. You should ask father why he couldn't compare to Lan Yunxiao back then. A prisoner can make grandfather so concerned. This is because father is not capable enough. Hearing this, Yu Man Lan fell into silence. No matter what, Lan Qingyin couldn't understand what happened back then. Lan Jingquan was also a heroic figure, but since he was born, why was he born? Lan Yunxiao was a genius that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. Wherever he appeared, everyone's brilliance would be overshadowed. If Lan Jingquan wasn't born in the Lan family, but in another family, then he would have already gotten everything he deserved. How difficult was it to get everyone to support a single person in such a large cultivation family? However, Lan Yunxiao was able to do it. This was a situation that ordinary people couldn't imagine. It was because she had personally witnessed Lan Yunxiao's strength that even though he was a prisoner, as long as he didn't die, she would feel uneasy. Fortunately, this time, her mortal enemy was finally gone. In the future, she didn't need to worry about Lan Yunxiao's appearance anymore. Seeing Yu Man Lan fall into silence, Lan Qingyin thought that Yu Man Lan was unhappy because of what she said, so she continued. Mother, if we leave now, the Yu clan might not be happy, but they can understand. Moreover, with our position in the Lan clan, we would be of great help to the Yu clan. They wouldn't ignore us just because of this. How dangerous would it be to stay in the Yu clan? So many young disciples have already died. If we lose our lives just because we don't want to offend the Yu clan, that would be really not worth it. Following Lan Qingyin's words, Yu Man Lan's heart felt a little better. You're right. The most important thing now is to stay alive. She didn't know what kind of powerful opponent the Yu clan had offended this time. The situation was actually so serious that it made people terrified. The Yu clan master stood in front of Yu Siqing. Yu Siqing's medical skills had always been the best in the Yu clan. Siqing, do you know how to deal with this poison? In just a few days, the Yu clan's clan master seemed to have aged quite a bit. One by one, his juniors died. He was really mentally and physically exhausted. Chapter 2048. Following Yu Siqing's words, The Yu clan leader's expression turned extremely ugly. He knew best how powerful Yu Siqing's medical and poison skills were. Sometimes, he would send Yu Siqing to deal with people he couldn't deal with openly. Most of the time, his opponents would lose their lives without knowing what happened. But now, Yu Siqing was telling him that the other party's poison skills weren't any weaker than his. When did their Yu clan provoke such a terrifying opponent? As I said earlier, there were other substances during the explosion, but many people still absorbed them into their bodies. Yu Siqing's expression darkened. Her perception was extremely sharp. Although she couldn't determine it before, she felt that something was wrong. Thus, she immediately warned the clan members. However, many people didn't take her words to heart and thought it wasn't a big deal. Hearing Yu Siqing's words, the Yu clan's clan head's face turned even uglier. He remembered that Yu Siqing had indeed mentioned it before, but after the Martial Skills Hall and Ancestral Hall were blown up, he didn't have the mood to care about it. His mind was already calculating the losses. Because of this, he forgot to warn the younger generation. Speaking of which, he was partly responsible for the current situation. I believe that I can neutralize this poison, but I need some time, Yu Siqing said slowly. She didn't feel good that the Yu clan had suffered such a great loss. The Yu clan head looked deeply at Yu Siqing, then patted Yu Siqing's shoulder and said, "Everything depends on you." Bailey Hongzhuang was analyzing Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's blood in the Chaos Ring to understand the composition of the poison. After more than 10 years of imprisonment, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had completely turned into poison people. As long as their blood dripped on plants, the plants would instantly wither and turn black. Just from this little change, one could see how terrifying the poison they were suffering from was. Bailey Hongzhuang covered the two with a blanket. They hadn't had a good rest in a long time. They hadn't had this kind of relaxation for more than 10 years. Thus, they slept for an extremely long time this time. Normally, whenever Yu Siqing was unhappy, she would torture them at any time. Therefore, there was never time for them to relax. Bailey Hongzhuang found that not only were their physical injuries very serious, but their mental strength was also extremely exhausted. It would definitely take a period of time for them to gradually recover. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the sleeping Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's faces. She discovered that Lan Yunxiao was truly very handsome. In the past, she had heard that Lan Yunxiao was a peerless talent who swept away thousands of young girls. Now that she had seen him in person, his handsomeness hadn't disappeared even after so many years of torment. Not only that, Mu Lingbing was also a true beauty. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at herself in the mirror and could see the similarities between herself, Mu Lingbing, and Lan Yunxiao. However, even though the two of them were sleeping soundly, their brows were tightly knitted together as if they were in great pain. Bailey Hongzhuang smoothed their brows and only hoped that the pain would be far away from them in the future. The three beasties silently watched Bailey Hongzhuang do all this with a myriad of emotions in their hearts. During this process, Di Beichen and Situ Yin successfully arrived at Tiangang sect. Chapter 2049. The return of the sect master and the young sect master naturally attracted the attention of all the disciples of the Tiangang sect. After Xia Jiqing and the others learned that Di Beichen had returned, their faces were filled with surprise. A few days ago, Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Di Beichen. They didn't know where Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had gone. They only thought that the two had gone to other places to gain experience. Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang had been good sisters for so many years. There had been no news of Bailey Hongzhuang, so she was very worried. However, this time she only saw Di Beichen come back and did not see Bailey Hongzhuang. She also felt very strange. "Junya, what do you think Hongzhuang did? Why hasn't she come back for so long?" Xia Jiqing frowned. Since the end of the assessment competition, Bailey Hongzhuang had been with Di Beichen. However, this time Hongzhuang did not come back with Di Beichen. Did something happen? Bai Junyu's face also showed a touch of doubt. I see that the sect master and the young sect master's expressions are very serious. I don't know what happened. Let's wait first. We will know eventually. With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Xia Jiqing was even more worried. Could something have happened to Hong Zhuang? Right now, they were already in the world of cultivation, and there were many experts. This was a place where anything could happen. Bai Junyu quickly shook his head. Don't think about it. Hong Zhuang will be fine. When Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were worried, Dong Fengyu and the others in the other halls were also worried. They still remembered that the last time Bailey Hong Zhuang separated from them was because she went to the blood abyss with Di Beiqian to cultivate. This time they did not ask, but they also felt that they might go to the same place. Now that the Sectmaster and the young Sectmaster had come back together, the atmosphere was really unusual. However, even if they were very worried, they could only wait for news in this situation. If something really happened to Bailey Hong Zhuang, then the most anxious person would be Di Beiqian. On the contrary, they could only stay here and worry, but they couldn't do anything to help. After arriving at Situ Yan's palace, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Di Beiqian moved Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing out of the Chaos Ring. The three beasts also followed closely. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were still asleep without any signs of waking up. Situ Yan's gaze was fixed on Mu Lingbing's face. After so many years, this was the first time he had seen his daughter. Looking at the face that was extremely similar to Mu Jinsei's, his gaze constantly changed as ripples appeared in his heart. His daughter was already so old and had suffered for so many years, but he had always thought that it was someone else. Thinking of this, he really hated that he couldn't punish himself. If Jinsei knew about this, she would definitely hate him. From Mu Lingbing's pale face, he could vaguely see some similarities with himself. He firmly believed that this was his daughter. Situ Yan's calm and natural face could not hide his excitement. After searching for so many years, he had not received any news. But now he saw his daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. The heavens had treated him well. Chapter 2050. Hong Zhuang. Why are uncle and auntie still unconscious? Di Beiqian looked at Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yu, who didn't show any signs of waking up. His face couldn't help but be filled with worry. He'd already heard from Hong Zhuang that the two of them were unconscious. It had been several days since they'd rushed back, but they were still unconscious. Following Di Beiqian's question, Citian's gaze also turned to Bailey Hong Zhuang with worry and nervousness. Hong Zhuang, will they be all right? They haven't had a good rest in a long time, so it's normal for them to sleep for a long time. Because they've exhausted too much of their mental strength, I'm afraid they won't be able to wake up for a while. However, I've been paying attention to their condition, so there shouldn't be any problems. Citian and Di Beiqian finally relaxed when they heard Bailey Hong Zhuang's words. Everyone knew that the best way to recover mental strength was to rest. During this period of rest, mental strength would unknowingly recover. Based on Lan Yunxiao and his wife's situation these past few years, this was a normal occurrence. Hong Zhuang, how are your parents? Si Tuyin asked with a frown. They looked too haggard. Bailey Hong Zhuang had already changed Mu Lingbing's clothes, but the scars on her exposed skin were still visible. They've been tortured by Yu Siqing all these years, so they're both physically and mentally exhausted. Moreover, Yu Siqing used them as test subjects for her poison techniques, so the accumulation of poison in their bodies is extremely shocking. That's why they're so haggard. It won't be easy to treat them. Bailey Hong Zhuang's voice was heavy. Si Tuyan's current emotions were probably the same as hers. As soon as he said that, Si Tuyan's hands clenched into fists. His eyes, which had always been kind and gentle, were already burning with anger. That despicable woman is actually so overbearing. Si Tuyan's eyes were spewing flames, and he looked like he couldn't wait to tear Yu Siqing to shreds. When he thought about how Yu Siqing had been flaunting her prowess in front of him all these years, he felt even more angry and ashamed. As it turns out, all these years, Yu Siqing had been tormenting his daughter, and he was completely unaware of it. He thought that Yu Siqing would know about Mu Jinsei's whereabouts, so he had kept Yu Siqing alive all these years. However, it was precisely because of his actions that his daughter and son-in-law were subjected to such torture. Grandfather, once father and mother recover, I will definitely use Yu Siqing's method to make her feel all the pain. Killing her would be letting her off too easily. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were also burning with anger and hatred. She had the same feelings as Si Tuyen. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Si Tuyen nodded. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang said, now is not the time to take Yu Siqing's life. At the very least, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao had to witness this scene with their own eyes. Only then would they be able to vent their years of resentment. Then, can Uncle and Annie's poison be cured? Deep Beichun furrowed his beautiful brows. His deep and kind voice was filled with worry. He knew how outstanding Hong Zhuang's medical skills were. Hong Zhuang had never worried about her medical skills when she encountered any problems. However, this time, Hong Zhuang said that it would be difficult to cure them. Just from this point, he could tell how serious the situation was. Chapter 2051. This was a battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and Yu Siqing. Bailey Hongzhuang was working hard on how to detoxify Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. Similarly, Yu Siqing was working hard on how to save the poisoned cultivators of the Yu clan. Both of them were researching nonstop. Yu Siqing's situation was the most urgent because every bit of time she spent, a few cultivators of the Yu clan would die. In a short period of time, the Yu clan was already in a miserable state. Naturally, the Yu clan situation could not be covered up. After the cultivators of Yutian City understood the situation, they did not dare to stay here for long. After all, no one knew when this infectious disease would spread to them. Mo Yunjue originally wanted to lead the people to finish this show. However, after this incident, they did not need to continue the show and directly left Yutian City. For so many years, Yutian City had never been so depressed. When Mo Yunjue knew what Bailey Hongzhuang had done, his eyes were filled with amazement. Every time Hongzhuang made a move, she could give people a sense of amazement and admiration. When he was in the Qing dynasty, Mo Yunjue had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's methods. However, this time Bailey Hongzhuang's methods had improved a lot compared to the last time. The only similarity was that whether it was the last time or this time, Mo Yunjue felt that the other party deserved it. Especially for a sanctimonious family like the Yu clan, they should be dampened like this. After the cultivators of Shitian Tower knew about this terrible storm, their hearts were full of shock and admiration for Bailey Hongzhuang. With such methods, if anyone offended Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a huge disaster. However, in an organization like Shitian Tower, no one was afraid of Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. On the contrary, they only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was too suitable to be their young mistress. In this way, who would dare to offend the Heaven Slaughter Pavilion? That would be courting death. Bailey Hongzhuang worked tirelessly to develop a detoxification method, and her research also made some progress. At the very least, she already knew about 2 of the poisons and the antidote. However, she had to carefully consider whether or not the other poisons in Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's bodies would be affected by these 2 poisons before she truly detoxified them. This was because all the toxins in their bodies had combined to form a strange balance. If he were to recklessly detoxify the poison, it would really affect the whole situation. This was the most difficult part of detoxification. Situ Yin could not help Bailey Hongzhuang with the detoxification, so he could only bring the precious heaven and earth treasures. As long as they could cure Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing, they would not hesitate to pay any price. Di Beichen sent the news that they had completed their mission back to Wuji Palace, but they could not personally tell Wuji Palace's palace master and palace master's wife. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang was guarding Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao. Suddenly, a commotion attracted Bailey Hongzhuang's attention. Mu Lingbing felt that she hadn't felt this comfortable in a long time. Even though her body still ached, it was better than it usually was. Chapter 2052. Amidst this comfortable feeling, Mu Lingbing had a vague feeling that she was already dead. If that wasn't the case, how could she have ever felt so comfortable in all these years? As her memories slowly returned, Mu Lingbing recalled how her daughter had come to save her and then left. Thinking of this, Mu Lingbing abruptly opened her eyes. She had fainted before seeing Yixin return safely. Did Yixin come back? How dangerous was the Yu family? And how shrewd was Yu Siqing? Thinking of all this, Mu Lingbing felt her hair stand on end. If something happened to Yi Xian because of this, that would be something she couldn't accept. Yi Xian. Mu Lingbing called out Bailey Hongzhuang's name, her face filled with worry. When Bailey Hongzhuang felt Mu Lingbing's movements, she had already walked to Mu Lingbing's side. Seeing Mu Lingbing's anxious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly held Mu Lingbing's hand. "Mother, I'm here, I'm here." Mu Lingbing opened her eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang by her side. Her nervousness and worry gradually dissipated. She held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. "Yi Xian, thank goodness you're all right." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. "Mother, I made sufficient preparations before going to save you. Absolutely nothing will happen." Mu Lingbing still had lingering fears. The Yu family is no different from a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. You were really lucky to be able to save us. All these years, she and Lan Yunxiao had tried many times to escape that hellish place. However, Yu Siqing was too shrewd. They had been discovered before they could escape. In the past, Yu Siqing would occasionally leave the house, but as time passed, Yu Siqing stayed in the house all the time. They didn't have any chance to leave. In addition, their bodies had gradually weakened, so leaving became even more impossible. "Mother, no matter what, we've already left the Yu family. That kind of thing won't happen again. Don't worry." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Mu Lingbing's eyes, unconsciously revealing a deep palpitation, and her heart couldn't help but ache. So many things had happened, and over 10 years of torment, Mu Lingbing's fear had long seeped in her bones. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded as a smile appeared on her face. "I didn't expect that after so many years, there would still be a time when we could leave." She had always thought that she would die in the Yu clan. The current environment was like a dream to her. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of her, she knew that everything was real. Mu Lingbing immediately thought of Lan Yunxiao and hastily asked, "Where's your father?" Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and gestured for Mu Lingbing to look in the other direction. "My father is resting over there. He hasn't woken up yet." Mu Lingbing turned her head. As expected, Lan Yunxiao was lying on the other side of her. Seeing this, Mu Lingbing finally relaxed. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Lingbing were talking, Lan Yunxiao slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes and saw Mu Lingbing and Bailey Hongzhuang, a deep smile spread across his handsome face. Yishuan Lingbing. The family of three was finally reunited. Chapter 2053. Bailey Hongzhuang told Di Beichen and Si Tian about Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's awakening. When Si Tian heard the news, his expression shook and he couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. "Grandfather, do you want to go in and see my mother?" Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Si Tian's expression. She could feel his excitement and nervousness. After all these years, Mu Lingbing had never seen him before. Hearing this, Si Tian thought for a moment and shook his head. They just woke up and need to rest well. They can't be too agitated. Let's wait for a few more days. After saying that, Si Tian slowly left. His footsteps grew heavier and heavier. Looking at Si Tian's back as he left, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown, her eyebrows filled with worry. "Hongzhuang, perhaps I'm afraid of returning home. Master still hasn't thought of how to face your mother," Di Beichun said slowly. He had grown up with his master and deeply understood his master's feelings for Mu Jin's. She was the person he didn't want to hurt the most in his life, but he had hurt Mu Jin's the most. Facing Mu Lingbing, his master also felt extremely guilty. It was because of this guilt that he couldn't face everything. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. She also understood her grandfather's thoughts. "Not only that, my mother didn't have parents since she was young. I'm sure that when my mother asks about this, grandfather will be speechless. There's also news about grandmother." Bailey Hongzhuang was also an insightful person. From Si Tian's attitude, she could already see the problem. If grandmother died, it would be the hardest thing for grandfather to accept. So he was afraid. Di Beichun looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's thoughts were extremely correct. But master is right. What it needs now is to rest well and adjust her condition to recover as soon as possible. If Master suddenly appears, Annie might not be able to bear it. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, I will try to communicate with my mother first and try to find out her attitude. This is a good idea. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with a smile. As long as Mu Lingbing was mentally prepared, this matter would be much simpler. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house again. Di Beichen did not want to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang and her family, so he did not go in to disturb them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's eyes never left Bailey Hongzhuang. They hadn't seen their daughter for more than 10 years and felt that they couldn't get enough of her. They had never thought that their daughter would grow up to be such an outstanding person while they were away. It was truly delightful. Bailey Hongzhuang poured 2 cups of water for Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao before asking, Father, Mother, what do you feel now? According to her judgment, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's bodies had recovered quite a bit after the effects of these pills. At the very least, he was much stronger than his previous weak appearance. However, because the poison had not been removed, they still felt some pain. We're already much better. Lan Yunxiao smiled. You gave us so many pills, so how could we not be well? Chapter 2054. Mu Lingbing couldn't help but look at Lan Yunxiao. We took a lot of pills. Lan Yunxiao nodded. Yishuan gave us almost all the pills that were useful to us. Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with astonishment. If it was the old her, taking some pills wouldn't have been a big deal. But now they were different. She and Lan Yunxiao were no longer the same as before. Bailey Hongzhuang had relied on her own efforts to reach where she was now. How could they let their daughter pay such a huge price? Yishuan, your father and I are already beyond cure. Why are you wasting those medicinal pills on us? Mu Lingbing's eyes were filled with desolation. After so many years of torture, she understood her body's condition very well. Even if she was stronger than before, there was no way to cure the poison in her body. There was simply too much. Bailey Hongzhuang had done so much for them. It was truly a waste of resources. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Mu Lingbing had the same thoughts as Lan Yunxiao. She immediately said, Mother, don't worry. Although the poison in your body is very complicated and it will take some time to cure you, I will definitely succeed. Hearing her words, Mu Lingbing couldn't help but stare at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. Very few people can cure the poison Yu Siqing created. That's why she's so terrifying. Yishuan, we all understand. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang understood that she didn't believe her. However, with her age, she wasn't very convincing. But she would use facts to prove herself to Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao. Yu Siqing's medical skills are good, but mine aren't bad either. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If not for that, Yu Siqing wouldn't have been unable to detoxify my poison. Seeing that Mu Lingbing didn't believe Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, the 3 beasts jumped out. Master's medical skills are very powerful. She's always been called a divine doctor. That old fellow Yu Siqing is already old. She's no match for Master. Mu Lingbing looked at the 3 beasts. Previously, she only knew that Baishe was Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast. She knew nothing about the black and white furballs. However, the fact that these 3 demonic beasts could actually speak was simply too shocking. Yixian, who are they? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but ask. They're my contracted beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing was still confused. She asked uncertainly, all 3? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. All 3 of them. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other, their eyes filled with confusion. 3 contracted beasts? This was truly unheard of. This has something to do with my cultivation method, Bailey Hongzhuang explained with a smile. The 3 beasties winked at Mu Lingbing and Mu Lingbing, trying to express their cuteness. Yixian, did you just say that you poisoned Yu Siqing? Lan Yunxiao's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. He didn't overlook Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Mu Lingbing also returned to her senses, her eyes filled with curiosity. I didn't poison Yu Siqing, but the Yu family. Chapter 2055. When Bailey Hongzhuang recounted the events of that day, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were both dumbfounded. This situation was completely different from what they had imagined. They had been worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to escape from the Yu clan and that the journey would be extremely dangerous. Who knew that not only did they leave the Yu clan, they even caused such a huge ruckus? The Yu clan was a cultivation family after all. Wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang a little too daring? Or had they been locked up by the Yu clan for so long that they no longer understood the situation in the Shengxian continent? Could it be that the Yu clan had fallen and was no longer the colossus it used to be? Yishuan, you mean that Yu Siqing still hasn't cured the poison? Mu Lingbing asked incredulously. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. According to the information we've gathered, she hasn't cured it yet. From the poison that Yu Siqing had concocted, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Yu Siqing's medical skills were not weak. As long as she had enough time, she would be able to cure it sooner or later. But now it depended on how long she would need. After all, the longer she took, the greater the Yu clan's losses would be. At least, in this way, the Yu clan's next generation would not be a match for the other families. In reality, it was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had thought. Paper couldn't wrap fire. Even if the Yu clan had done their best to block the news, Yu Tianqing was not completely a Yu clan member. As the cultivators of Yu Tianqing left, the news naturally spread. Many cultivation families already knew about the Yu clan situation. Some were shocked, some were sympathetic, but most of them were gloating. As a cultivation family, the Yu clan had never helped the world. They were completely focused on accumulating wealth. Usually, when someone in the clan needed help from the Yu clan would demand an exorbitant price. Regarding this, even if they were dissatisfied, they could do nothing about it. Who would have thought that the Yu clan would encounter such a huge problem this time? This was really good news. A certain clan, the Yu clan, has really eaten their own medicine this time. They have suffered such a huge loss. I wonder when they offended such a powerful poison master. Even Yu Siqing was stumped. Recently, the Yu clan's dead people have been brought out wave after wave. If you don't cure the poison, I'm afraid that the Yu clan will be removed from the list. Another family. Who asked the Yu clan to be so arrogant? Truly, evil people will be dealt with by evil people. Usually, no one can control them. They really think they're so great. I've heard that the Yu clan recently issued a call for poison masters and doctors with strong poison techniques. One must know that there were countless poison masters and doctors who had racked their brains to go to the Yu clan, but the Yu clan had completely ignored them. Now that something like this has happened, it's really ridiculous to gather everyone together. I wonder how many people have gone. What a joke. The poison is so powerful and contagious. Even Yu Siqing can't deal with it. Wouldn't it be the same as sending others to their deaths? So, no one went there at all? Ha! When Bailey Hongzhuang talked about this matter, she was very happy. She was quite satisfied with the interest this time. However, this was just the beginning. The Yu clan would definitely pay a heavy price for everything that their family had suffered all these years. Chapter 2056. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so powerful. The Yu family was a world-renowned medical family. That was why they had gone to the Yu family to seek medical help, resulting in their current predicament. But now, their daughter's medical skills had reached such a level. So the Yu family has suffered a great loss this time, Lan Yunxiao said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. They've gone overboard these past few years. They deserve this loss. Mu Lingbing narrowed her eyes. Indeed, they deserve it. As a medical family, the Yu family pretended to practice medicine to help the world, but in reality, they didn't have the heart of a bodhisattva. A few doctors with good medical skills had been recruited to the Yu clan. As a result, the possibility of everyone seeking medical treatment had decreased by a few degrees. Over the years, Yu Siqing had often told them about various things. This was because Yu Siqing believed that they would never be able to escape, so they had a good understanding of the Yu family situation. If it weren't for the Yu family, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Lan Yunxiao's eyes flashed with hatred. If he still had the strength, he would definitely destroy the Yu family with his own hands. They were very clear in their hearts that Bailey Hongzhuang was doing all this to avenge them, so that they could vent their resentment. In reality, after learning of this matter, they were indeed delighted. Father, mother, I've already made a few sets of antidotes. Bailey Hongzhuang reached out and took the antidotes from his side. Because you've been poisoned with too many poisons, I can't determine the composition of these poisons in such a short time, so I can only determine some. Once these poisons are removed, I'll try to detoxify the others. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression revealed some helplessness. In this situation, she could only do this. Once the symptoms of some poisons disappeared, she would be able to determine the other poisons. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Lingbing suddenly remembered something, and her eyes brightened. Yixuan, I remember the composition of Yu Siqing's poison. Will it be of any help to you? Mu Lingbing asked slowly. She didn't know much about medicine, but it was said that it would help doctors. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes filled with surprise and astonishment. Mother, you really remember the composition? It was precisely because she didn't know the exact composition that she could only discover it one by one. If Mu Lingbing knew the composition, then it would be easy for her to detoxify the poison. Mu nodded her head slightly. Yu Siqing's every time she made a poison, she would tell us the composition and ingredients of the poison. I was locked up in the dungeon all day and had nothing else to do. Thus, when Yu Siqing mentioned this, I remembered it. In truth, she had knew the Yus. She had wanted to remember everything. After all, if she had the chance to come out in the future, she might be able to cure the poison. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties all understood. Chapter 2057. Mother, if you know these ingredients, I'll be able to detoxify your poison very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a joyful smile. She never thought that Mu Lingbing would be so meticulous, actually remembering all of this. In this way, the most difficult problem could be solved. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other with joy in their eyes. They never thought that they would be able to detoxify their poison one day. Bailey Hongzhuang handed a brush and paper to Mu Lingbing. Mother, think carefully and write it down. Although Mu Lingbing tried her best to remember all of this, it wasn't easy for her to remember so much time had passed and so many poisons had been used. Your mother has a photographic memory. As long as she wants to remember something, she'll never forget it. Lan Yunxiao's face rippled with an elegant and charming smile. Mu Lingbing was gifted with this ability. Because of this, Mu Lingbing had an incomparable advantage in terms of cultivation. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened with surprise and surprise. She never expected Mu Lingbing to have such a unique and powerful ability. It was truly astonishing. While Bailey Hongzhuang and Lan Yunxiao were talking, Mu Lingbing had already recorded the ingredients on a piece of paper. She didn't pause at all, as if she'd always remembered everything. She slowly wrote down the names and ingredients of each poison one after another. The three beasties watched in amazement. No wonder Master was so powerful. Master's parents weren't just ordinarily powerful either. Mu Lingbing wrote very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest maintained their silence as they watched Mu Lingbing write. After a while, Mu Lingbing handed the brush and paper to Bailey Hongzhuang. It's all here. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the content written on the paper, and her face suddenly had a clear look of understanding. Just as she'd predicted, the antidotes she'd created were correct. Other than that, there were a few other poisons that she'd only vaguely guessed at and wasn't completely sure. Now that she understood the situation, she was able to prescribe the right medicine. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, unsure if she could do it. After all, Yu Siqing was too famous. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Father, mother, don't worry. I'll be able to detoxify all your poisons soon. Both Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao's eyes lit up with joy at her words. They thought they didn't have long to live, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang, they couldn't help but feel sad. They'd just met, and soon they'd be separated. However, they now had the hope to continue living. How could they not be happy about that? Father, mother, Hongzhuang, Yin Yun's Bing, and Lan Yunxiao's mothers and Lan Yunxiao's, Bailey used Yinmu to Hongwang. This is, it looked like she was going to win this battle between her and Yu Siqing. Yu Siqing would never have imagined that Mu Ling Bing had memorized all the ingredients. With her skills, it wouldn't be difficult for her to create the appropriate antidote. Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao took the antidote and didn't doubt its effects at all. They directly swallowed it. Chapter 2058. You've been poisoned for a long time, and the poison is stubborn in your body. My antidote can detoxify the poison, but the process will be painful, Bailey Hongzhuang explained slowly. She also wanted to alleviate some of Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's pain, but this was something that could only be resolved by them. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing smiled nonchalantly at Bailey Hongzhuang's words. What kind of torture had they not endured all these years? The pain of detoxifying poison was nothing to them. After all, detoxifying some of the poison would lessen their pain in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally understood Lan Yunxiao and Lan Yunxiao's thoughts. This pain shouldn't be difficult for them to bear. Very quickly, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing felt a burst of pain and itchiness in their bodies. The antidote passed through their cells and removed every bit of the poison from their bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang stood guard at the side to prevent any accidents from happening. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be much of a problem with detoxifying these poisons at the same time. An hour later, PFFF, Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing spat out blood clots. However, the blood clots had turned completely black and fell to the ground with a sizzling sound. Just by looking at them, they knew how terrifying the poison was. Yet it had remained in their bodies all these years. It was truly shocking. After seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt relieved. Father, Mother, do you feel better? Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing looked at each other. After enduring so much pain, their faces were pale. However, at this moment, after Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, they really felt that their bodies were a bit more relaxed, and the pain that had been accompanying them was also reduced a bit. As expected, it's much better, Mu Lingbing exclaimed at Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, she no longer doubted Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to create these antidotes without understanding the ingredients. This was not something an ordinary doctor could do. Yishuan, I didn't expect your medical skills to be so formidable. Lan Yunxiao smiled. As for his daughter, he really admired her very much. Yishuan, how did you survive all these years? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but be curious when she saw how outstanding her daughter was. She wanted to know every step of Hongzhuang's growth over the years. Seeing Mu Lingbing's curious expression, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and said, Mother, you've just neutralized some of the poison and your bodies have been drained. Let's take a good rest for now. I'll tell you about my experiences over the years next time. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, she did feel weak and exhausted. She still had plenty of time to spend with Bailey Hongzhuang in the future. The future was long, so there was no need to rush. After Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao rested, Bailey Hongzhuang instructed the three beasts to keep an eye on the situation before leaving the room. Since she already knew the ingredients of these poisons, she naturally had to create the antidote as soon as possible. The sooner she created the antidote, the sooner her parents could be relieved of their pain. She was no stranger to some of these poisons. Chapter 2059. Bailey Hongzhuang studied it carefully. After thinking about what materials she needed, she went to the alchemy hall. She had to get these herbs back first before she could configure the antidote. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way to the alchemy hall. Passing by the resource hall, she found that it was crowded and lively. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a while and found that today was the day to receive cultivation resources. No wonder there were so many people coming today. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Now she was not in the mood to receive these things. She just wanted to detoxify her parents as soon as possible. As long as her parents could be detoxified a day earlier, they could end the pain earlier. Xia Jiqing and the others have been worried about Bailey Hongzhuang since Di Beichen came back. However, they had never had the chance to see Di Beichen. Naturally, they had no way to inquire about these things. Just as Xia Jiqing received the cultivation resources and was about to return to the Vermilion Bird Hall, she suddenly saw a familiar figure. Her eyes could not help but be filled with excitement. Hong Zhuang. Chapter 2060. When I came back, I was delayed because of some things. I made everyone worry about me. I'm really sorry. Bailey Hong Zhuang's light and pleasant voice had a trace of apology. This time, she really put all her attention on her parents and forgot to tell Xia Jiqing and the others. It was really her thoughtlessness. Everyone still had some complaints in their hearts, but at this moment, after hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's words, the dissatisfaction in their hearts completely dissipated. Hong Zhuang was different from them. Hong Zhuang had more things to do than them. Moreover, they had been with Hong Zhuang for so long and always felt that Hong Zhuang had some secrets. In this regard, no one said anything. It's okay, Hong Zhuang. As long as you are okay, we can rest assured. Xia Jiqing said with a smile. Originally, she was complaining about Hong Zhuang, but now listening to Hong Zhuang's explanation, she was a little embarrassed. Dongfang Yu and the others nodded. Yes, as long as you are okay. Gong Xiaoqing, Yuan Xiaoman, and the others all had smiles on their faces. Boss, I haven't seen you for a while. You must have made a lot of progress, right? Yuan Xiaoman's face was filled with a curious smile. Every time she saw her boss, she couldn't help but marvel at her progress. Speaking of which, she had always been with her boss before. She didn't understand how her boss cultivated and how her progress was so much faster than them. As Yuan Xiaoman's voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. It must be known that during the time they stayed in Tiangang's sect, they also didn't relax for a moment. Now, they were different from before. The strength of the cultivators around them was very strong. If they didn't work hard, the ranking on the list of famous pillars was clearly written. Every time their ranking dropped, it would make them feel ashamed. Therefore, they could only work as hard as they could to prevent their rankings from dropping. Now, they finally understood why the cultivators in the sects could cultivate so much faster than the cultivators in the secular world. It was not only because of the difference in cultivation resources, but also because of a sense of urgency. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. There is not much change. Previously, she mainly cultivated her own control of Yuan Qi in Wuji Palace. She only improved her cultivation on the Heaven Stairway at night. Later on, she focused all her energy on developing explosives and rescuing her parents. Her cultivation was delayed by quite a bit. As soon as this remark came out, Yuan Xiaoman and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their eyes were filled with a strange color. This situation wasn't in line with Bailey Hongzhuang's style at all. Although everyone had some doubts, they didn't say anything. Yuan Jixin smiled and said, "Boss, we are all working hard to catch up with you." Just as Yuan Jixin had said, Bailey Hongzhuang was the goal of all of them. Although the cultivators in the branch hall gave them a lot of pressure, their real motivation was Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not stronger than theirs. However, everyone clearly came together, but Bailey Hongzhuang surpassed them by so much. Since Bailey Hongzhuang could do it, it proved that all of this was feasible. Therefore, they must work hard to not be left behind too much. Chapter 2061. Hongzhuang, where are you going? Gong Xiaoqing asked. They did not see Bailey Hongzhuang in the resource hall. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come here to get cultivation resources from the resource hall. I'm going to the alchemy hall to buy some herbs, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone suddenly understood. For Bailey Hongzhuang, in addition to cultivation, there were also alchemy, inscription, and medical skills. Maybe Hongzhuang would mainly focus on alchemy during this time. So that's how it is. Gong Xiaoqing suddenly said, Hongzhuang, when will you go back to the Vermilion Bird Hall to cultivate? Xia Jiqing asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang had not appeared in the Vermilion Bird Hall since the last time she left. Her ranking was dropping little by little. I'll go back in a few days. I have some things to do recently. Her dark phoenix eyes were filled with thoughts. As a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Hall, it was indeed inappropriate for her to not return to the Vermilion Bird Hall for so long. Fortunately, CTN had already greeted the hall master before, so there was nothing to do with it. Bailey Hongzhuang left after chatting with everyone for a while. She was really busy now. After Xia Jiqing and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang leave, their faces were filled with doubts. I don't know what Hongzhuang is busy with these days. She seems to have lost some weight. Xia Jiqing sighed. She really hoped that she could help Hongzhuang, but now there was nothing she could do. This feeling was really depressing. Boss has always been very busy. When she is free, she will naturally contact us. Yuan Xiaoman was very optimistic. Boss's identity was not the same as theirs. As the sweetheart of the young sect master, Boss had to bear much more than them. Therefore, what they could do now was to understand Boss. In a few days, when Hongzhuang is free, she will definitely tell us everything. Dongfang Yu smiled brightly, his peach blossom eyes slightly raised. No matter what happened, he believed that Hongzhuang would always treat them as friends. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, her mind was also thinking about Xia Jiqing and the others. Looking at everyone's appearance today, it was obvious that everyone had adapted well in Tiangang's sect, and she did not need to worry. As for the matter of her parents, she still needed to keep a secret. Although she believed in Xia Jiqing and the others, she could not let her parents' lives. Yu Xiqing had placed all her attention on concocting the antidote, so she didn't have enough time to confirm the identity of the two corpses in the dungeon. Once Yu Xiqing came back to her senses, she might come to find Situ Yin to inquire. If someone leaked the news, the situation would be a lot more trouble. His parents were still so weak. Plus, once the Lan family knew about this, Lan Jingquang and his family would be prepared. Their plan wouldn't be so easy to carry out. Therefore, before her parents recovered, she could only hide this news. When Bailey Hongzhuang came to the alchemy hall, she saw that the alchemy hall was full of people. It was very lively. Chapter 2062. Although it was Bailey Hongzhuang's first time coming to Tiangang's sect's alchemy hall, she felt that it was very familiar. Soon, Bailey Hongzhuang came to the place where medicinal herbs were sold and directly told the disciple the medicinal herbs she needed. After the disciple saw that Bailey Hongzhuang actually needed so many medicinal herbs, his eyes were also filled with a touch of surprise. Moreover, these medicinal herbs were of all kinds, and he actually couldn't see what they were for. However, he was no stranger to Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. In fact, presumably the disciples of Tiangang's sect would not find it strange. Therefore, even if the disciple had doubts in his heart, he did not dare to neglect. After all, who dared to offend Tiangang's sect's future young master's wife? Wasn't this courting death? Just as the disciple went to help Bailey Hongzhuang get the medicinal herbs, the conversation of the surrounding cultivators entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. In another month, the alchemist selection will begin. I don't know how many newcomers there will be in our alchemy hall this time. Yes, every time our alchemy hall recruits people, it's later than the other 4 halls. I hope a few junior sisters will come, huh? I heard that the selection this time is very big. Not only will they select newcomers, but even we will also have an assessment. What? Is it true or false? I accidentally heard it when the elders were talking. Although I'm not too clear about the details, I can guarantee that I didn't hear wrongly. In that case, we have to prepare early. If we don't perform well at that time, it will be terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also lit up after hearing everyone's conversation. In that case, Lu Qinyue would soon come to Tiangang's sect to participate in the alchemist assessment. Everyone saw Lu Qinyue's infatuation with Gong Shaoqing. As early as when they left Kanglan School, Lu Qinyue had already said that she would definitely come when the time came. She believed that Lu Qinyue had been waiting for this alchemist assessment for a long time. However, this alchemist assessment seemed to be a little different. She believed that with Lu Qinyue's attainments in alchemy, she would definitely be able to pass this assessment. Regarding Lu Qinyue's persistence, she also very much admired. She also sincerely hoped that Lu Qinyue and Gong Shaoqing could be lovers and get married. That would be the best result. Originally, after Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing got together, she was a little worried about Yuan Xiaoman's mood. Fortunately, when he saw Yuan Xiaoman today, he saw that Yuan Xiaoman still had a lively appearance, without the slightest bit of discouragement or sadness. Although it may be that Yuan Xiaoman deliberately did not want to show it, on the other hand, it was related to Yuan Xiaoman's carefree personality. In short, everything was developing in a good direction. Bailey Hongzhuang was extremely happy. Very quickly, I have prepared all the herbs that Bailey Hongzhuang needs. Bailey Hongzhuang took the herbs, and a smile appeared on her face. Thank you. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang turned and left the alchemy hall. However, the disciple who saw Bailey Hongzhuang smile looked at the back of Bailey Hongzhuang as she left. He was still immersed in Bailey Hongzhuang's smile and did not recover. Bailey Hongzhuang's outstanding appearance was well known, but everyone had only seen it once from a distance. Now that he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, he understood why the young master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2063. After returning to the sect master's quarters, Bailey Hongzhuang dove into her room and began to concoct the antidote based on the poison. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing wouldn't be resting for long this time, so she hoped she could quickly concoct all the antidotes. Right now, she felt an indescribable satisfaction from being able to see Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing's smiles. Kinship was just that peculiar. Seeing the other person happy made her feel even happier. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that after saving her parents, she had become even more passionate in doing things. It was as if there was an inexhaustible energy in her body. All of her hard work was for the sake of seeing their smiles. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang begin her research as soon as she returned, Di Beichun stood outside the room and quietly watched Bailey Hongzhuang for a moment. His lips curled into a gentle and enchanting smile before he turned and left. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang now, even he could feel a kind of happiness. This kind of happiness could only be given to Hongzhuang by Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing. It was something he couldn't give. However, to be able to see Bailey Hongzhuang like this, he also had an indescribable satisfaction. When the three beasties saw this, they looked at each other and smiled. Master is full of fighting spirit right now. I think we should just wait patiently. Master won't be coming out for a while, Baishir said with a smile. Although Master was busier than before, they could feel that she was the happiest right now. I really hope that Master's parents can recover quickly. It would be best if they could recover their strength. Xiao He clasped her hands together and couldn't help praying. Lan Yunxiao and Mu Lingbing were heroes in the past, so there was no need to mention their strength. However, now that they were in this state, even if the poison was cured, their strength couldn't compare to Lan Jingquang's. Speaking of which, Lan Jingquang and his family had really harmed Master's family. Definitely. Master is so powerful, so her parents must be powerful as well, Xiaobai said with certainty. It firmly believed that everything could be resolved. Bailey Hongzhuang focused all her attention on the antidote. Looking at the various ingredients written down by Mu Lingbing, Bailey Hongzhuang, who was proficient in medicine, could understand the effects of these poisons after careful consideration. However, when she understood the true effects of these poisons, the hatred in her heart only deepened. Yu Siqing truly had a heart as venomous as snakes and scorpions. Every single one of her poisons was extremely vicious. Once consumed, the person wouldn't immediately die, but they would suffer immense pain. Although Bailey Hongzhuang knew how to concoct poisons, she didn't use them often. Only when she met some extremely hateful people would she use such a method to punish them. However, Yu Yuzes had used all these poisons. She understood why her parents' health the sect. If it weren't for the fact that their bodies were strong enough in the past, they would have lost their lives under the ravages of these poisons. Even though they'd managed to preserve their lives, their condition couldn't get any worse. Suppressing the hatred in her heart, Bailey Hongzhuang focused on concocting the antidotes. She made 2 portions of each antidote and placed them to the side.